Hey y'all, it's me coming to you live and in color. So I am in my childhood bedroom. Very happy place to be. And most of you guys who are going to get this video know that I missed Christmas at my parents' house for the very first time in life due to COVID-19. And so I decided that I was going to make a trip as soon as I was done with my quarantine to make sure I put my eyes on my parents, and I needed them to put their eyes on me too. So I planned this trip, and my trip almost got canceled because y'all know we got hit with the ridiculous snowstorm on Monday that I did not think was going to happen, and it did. And so I had to wait until Tuesday to get my rental car, and then rode out on Wednesday, as I shared with you guys already. Because then I heard it on Thursday. It was supposed to be more snow, which I don't know if y'all got snow or not because I'm not watching the news. But yeah, I'm here and I'm glad to be here. And so I shared with you guys on yesterday that I wanted to share with you guys my road home revelations, which is what I'm just calling what's going on in my head right now. And I am working this year and began working last year on discerning the voice of God. And in my studies and in listening to pastors and things like that, one of the trademarks of knowing that what you hear is God's voice is if what you're thinking you heard stands up to what it says in the word. And so I've been very intentional about when I think that something I hear is God's voice, going and making sure that I can find scripture to support it. And so, yeah. So I am also working in 2022 and began in 2021, documenting my prayers and my conversations with God. And y'all know me, I don't really like writing like that. And so video documentation has been a thing that I'm doing. And so this is probably going to have all kinds of like mess ups and stuff on it because it's really not for y'all. It's for me. And I'm just sharing it with you guys because I love y'all. And so these are my road home revelations. Now, also, full disclaimer, I'm not a theologian. I'm nobody's pastor, minister, preacher, none of that. This is just what was on my heart. So I'm going to give it to you guys the way it was given to me. So to start, my parents were very fearful about me coming down to Georgia because the only thing that's been on the news down here has been whatever was going on with I 95 after the snowstorm. And so every time they looked at the TV, it was like I 95 shut down, people can't move, black ice, yada, yada, yada. And so they were very worried about me coming down. And on top of that, I've never driven more than like 3.5 hours in a car by myself in my life. And so I know that even before the snowstorm, that was an issue for them. And so they had said, we just want to make sure that you're going to be safe. We know that we want to see you, but we want you to be able to get here. And if you can't get here, we don't want you to come at all. And so I was worried about coming. They were worried about me coming. And I almost didn't come. Well, I get in my car, and y'all know I have absolutely no sense of direction, but I do know that to go home, it is 95 to 85 to 75. Like, it's straight shot, and you don't have to know anything about directions. You can go your 95 to 85 to 75. And so, knowing that still, I put my route in GPS. And what was interesting is this time I didn't do none of that. Like, I got on 495 and then GPS routed me to 81, and then from 81 to I think it was like 23. And it was the most beautiful scenic drive I've ever experienced in my life. I went like through Shenandoah, like Roanoke, and then down like part of the Appalachian Trail, and then through like the Great Smoky Mountains. Like, it was absolutely gorgeous. But what I got from that was that I'm over here worried about this path that I just knew I was supposed to take because that's how you get there. And God had already said, we not even going to go that way. Like, you over here worried, and this isn't even a plan. And so my scripture reference there, Proverbs 16:9, In their hearts, humans plan their course, but the Lord establishes their steps, right? Like, here you thought you was going one way, but I got you. We not even doing that. Don't nobody need to worry about black ice. Don't nobody need to worry about snow. Because when I tell y'all, it was gorgeous and the roads were clear. There wasn't even any traffic, y'all. My whole trip, there was absolutely no traffic. But even in that, there was also just the idea of GPS as a whole, right? And so the thing about GPS is they give you your directions one step at a time. And I mean, I'm quick on my toes, right? So I can follow a multi step direction, but I'm also super analytical and I like to try to figure things out. And so if you give me like all of the directions, and if I would have looked at it and saw, okay, from 495, I'm going to get on 81. I'd been like, nah, I'm not gonna do this. Like, I'm gonna hop on 95 and I'm gonna go 95 to 85 to 75 because I know that's what I'm supposed to do and I know that's what's worked in the past, right? And so what I took from that was I've got John 13:7. And Jesus replied, do you not realize now what I'm doing? Oh, you do not realize now what I'm doing, but later you will understand, right? He already knows that I'm going to think that I'm supposed to know what's to happen. And so he's not going to give me all of the directions right now. He's going to give me what I need, and I'm going to understand later that he's going to get me there. Or also, I've got Habakkuk 2:3, which says, for still the vision awaits its appointed time. It's hastened to the end. It will not lie. If it seems slow, wait for it. It will surely come. It will not delay. And so, like, the Lord knows me. I'm GPS all the way. I can't give you everything that's a part of this plan because if you had the whole plan, you're going to take this joint and you're going to break it down into pieces and try to figure out why that's not going to work and why that doesn't make sense. And so I just got to give you the pieces that you need right now so that I can get you to the next step. And then when you get to the next step, I'm going to give you that next piece. And so, yeah, that was my first reflection. Um, and so I didn't roll out as early as I planned on leaving yesterday because I wanted the sun to come up and this ice that I thought was going to be on 95 that I didn't even take to melt. And so when I got Flex up, we went out and used the bathroom and he peed, but he didn't poop. And I was like, oh, here we go. As soon as we get in the car, Flex gonna have to poop. And of course, that's exactly what happened. We was like 45 minutes into the trip and he starts barking and then he started looking at me all crazy. And I knew exactly what it meant. And so we stopped, we pulled off the highway. I pulled into like a complex and I gave him this whole pep talk. Look, Flexi, we are going to get out of this car. You gonna pee, you gonna poop, do your business, and then we getting right back in the car. We are on a schedule, right? This trip is supposed to take 11 hours and 30 minutes. We're going to make a couple stops. We're going to get something to eat. We're going to make it back home. And so I'm having this whole little pep talk conversation with him about what we're going to do. And that's absolutely not what happened, right? And so he gets out the car and then he goes to play in the snow and then he goes and chases a squirrel and then he wants to dig a hole and then he pees and then he poops and then he pees again and then he plays in the snow again. And whole time I'm like, yo, bruh, like hurry up. We on this schedule. And he knows I'm talking about him. That's why he just hopped up behind me because he knows I'm talking about him. But from that, I'm just like, Flex, what are you doing? And he's like, I'm not bothered with your schedule, right? Like, I'm not bothered with your schedule. And it's not that God's not bothered with our schedule, but he knows that he's going to do what has to be done because he knows better than we do, right? And so, Isaiah 55, 8 through 9, for my thoughts are not your thoughts, and my ways are not your ways. Like, Kia, you trying to do this the way you want to do it on your schedule. And guess what? That is not what we doing. Just pause, right? And so we get back in the car and we ride like 45 more minutes down the road. And at this point, right, Flexi done pee, he done pooped. I fed him a little bit. He had some water. Like, you've had absolutely everything you need. And the Joker starts whining. And so we like, what, 2 hours into the trip at this point, and he already whining. And I'm like, yo, this is a 12-hour trip, and he's whining already. And so I'm like, this is going to be a trip, right? But he's whining, and I kept rolling because I knew he was good, right? And so you've gone to the bathroom, you've had food, you're not hurting, you're not like nothing's wrong, you just uncomfortable and you just don't want to be there anymore. And that's why you're whining. I've been stuck in his car. Farthest I done ever went is to work, and work is 15 minutes down the road. I'm just uncomfortable and I don't want to do this anymore. And so what I got, well, I didn't get nothing from that immediately. Let me be real. I didn't get anything from that immediately. But then I watched Joint Revival. I didn't watch it. I listened to it because I was still rolling in the car, and it got me here my last 2 hours. But the pastor who preached for Joint Revival talked, I think his name was Reginald Sharp Jr., and he preached from First Job. And so basically, one of the things I learned from that sermon is that it is absolutely okay for us to keep whining, even when we know our needs have been met, right? And it's not because we don't trust God or because we don't think that things are going to be okay, but it's because we're human and we have emotions. And so in First Job, you had a situation where like all this bad stuff happens to Job back to back to back. And what I learned about during this sermon is Job rips off his clothes and he shaves his head. And like back in the day, that was how they showed that like they were mourning and they were distraught. And so he does all of these things, and that's him showing that he's mourning, but then he falls to the ground in worship. And so crying and screaming and showing your emotion doesn't mean that you don't trust God to do what he does, but we're people, right? We have emotions. And so sometimes you're going to trust that God's got it, right? He done already did what he needs to do. He's gonna already work it out, and you know that, but you're still uncomfortable and you're still bothered, and that's absolutely okay. And I'm going to circle back to that in a second because I got something else from that later, but I'm trying to give y'all it in the order that I got it, right? And so, FYI, then Flex goes on after he whined for like 30 minutes, like a whole 30 minutes he whined, and then he took a nap. And it's a little word in that too, right? Be still and know that I'm God. I got this, right? Like that was real Psalms 46:10. Like you whined, you got it out. Now just be still because it's all taken care of. Um, yeah, so that was the third thing I got. So number 4. One of my girlfriends called me on my ride. I only talk to 2 people on my ride, like for extended periods of time. And so one of my girlfriends called, and she and I were talking about our focus for the new year. And so not like New Year's resolutions or anything, just what we plan on focusing on. And one of the things that she and I have in common that we plan on focusing on is us, like focusing on self. And so she was sharing with me that she's already begun to learn that when you make a decision to focus on yourself, and previously you were somebody who was just in demand, like already there, like all the time and accessible for people, they get upset because they're not used to you having boundaries, because they're used to you just being straight up easily accessible. And so then they get into their feelings. And so I was sharing with her that Pastor Battle preached about self and taking care of yourself. And he preached from Matthew 22:35-40. And so that's when Jesus asked about the most important commandments. And he says, love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your strength and all your mind. And then he says, and number 2 is love your neighbor as yourself. And what Battle says is that the part that we miss there, especially those of us who like are always doing for others, is the as. So to love your neighbor as yourself. And so if I'm loving my neighbor as myself, that implies that I got to be loving myself first, right? Because I can't love nobody else as me if I ain't love me first. And so that joint was deep for me when I watched that, because I was like, yo, I ain't never thought about it like that. And he also talked about like the old school like Christian mentality when we talked about joy, and they said joy was like serving Jesus, serving others, and then serving yourself. But in reality, it's supposed to be serve the Lord, take care of yourself, and then take care of others, right? And so while me and my homegirl was talking about it, she was like, she spent all of this time making sure everybody else is good, whether it be like their mental health or their physical health or like financially. She's made sure all of these people are good, and she's always justified it by saying, because I'm a servant, I have a servant's heart. And that's something I really identify with. Like, I'm a servant, I have a servant's heart, so I'm doing for all these people because I'm a servant, right? But what hit me while she and I was talking was like, if you think of it like this, right? And so I'm a servant. I'm gonna serve the Lord first because everything I got is already His, and He's going, get His portion because it's all His anyway, right? But He's not gonna make sure that I'm without. So I serve the Lord, right? And so then if I jump from the Lord to serving others, then ninjas is greedy, right? And so if I take what I got and I go straight for serving others, then they gonna make day plates and they gonna pile them up and they gonna get more food than they need, and then they gonna fix to go plates, and them jokers not even gonna ask me if I ate yet, right? And so now I've served God, I've served others, and then I'm hungry, right? I don't have nothing to eat. And so what that verse says, what Matthew 22 says, is we serve God because He's going to have His portion and ensure that we're taken care of. Then I need to serve myself, right? I need to fix my plate, and I need to make my leftovers or my meal prep for the week. And then I'm full, right? I got what I need. I'm full. And so then I'm able to joyfully serve others. And so, yeah, serve God, serve yourself, right? Take care of yourself. Do what you need to do for you so you're going to be all right. And then you're able to fully show up and be there for others. And so, yeah, that's the big thing for me. Something that I'm going to be working on this year. Making sure that Kia got what she need before I serve others. And so the final piece during my road home revelations, uh, going back to joint revival, which was powerful. And if you didn't log in for day one, we still got tonight and we got Friday. And then, of course, Pastor TV Jakes is going to be on the leadership joint on Saturday morning. Um, but the last piece I got, going back to the Job story. And so we have all of these crazy things that happen to Job. But before these things happened, Satan came and like had a conversation with God. And he was like, looking for somebody to tempt. And God said, try Job. And so for me, I'm like, y'all know how people like be like, try Jesus, but don't try me. Like, God straight up said, try Job. Like, he can handle it. Like, they had a whole conversation, and God told him to try Job because he was that sure of Job's faith, that he knew that regardless of whatever it was that the enemy did, Job was going to like be all right? And so the first thing that I got out of that, number one, was that the enemy needed God's permission to mess with his people. And like, how powerful is that? Like, the enemy can't even get to you without God's permission, but God's also not going to give the enemy permission to do nothing to you that he knows you can't handle, right? And so the enemy legit, like, he had to have God remove this hedge of protection for him to be able to touch Job and his family and his crops and his servants and like all of these things that happened. God gave permission for that to happen. And so that's powerful. Like, Satan's not even able to move in our lives without God say so. And so what I really got from that though is Genesis 50:20. what the enemy meant for evil, God's gonna work out for my good, right? And so if he come up here in my spot and he messing with all this stuff that I got going on, like the Lord's not even gonna let that happen. Number one, if I can't handle it, but also if it's not something that he's gonna work out to make happen for me. And then the other thing that I got from it is like, if God allowed it, it's because he knew I got it, right? And so I have to be fully confident that, whatever it is I'm going through, whatever it is I'm dealing with, like God was like, yo, like this my people, she gonna be all right. And so whatever it is that you doing over there, she gonna be all right, and we gonna make this joint work. And so yeah, 12 hours in the car with a puppy. Those were my road home revelations. Um, and I'm going to be very strategic, like I said, about putting these things on video. More for me, but sharing with y'all too, because y'all are my accountability partners, and y'all, keep me together. Uh, so yeah, thanks for listening. And if I haven't told you yet, Happy New Year, and I love you.